Welcome to another YouTube masterclass. As you can see, I'm painting one of my favorite subjects, hollyhocks. And what I'm going to show you today is how to make stems on plants, particularly plants that have these very wide stems like tulips and hollyhocks, and making them look curved and circular and three-dimensional. We're going to use some really simple techniques, but they're just going to make everything look so much more lively. If you're interested in other parts of this painting tutorial, I'll put any related videos and links in the video description. But first, let's look at what actually makes a stem look circular. So if we think about what makes areas recede, it's usually dark colour. You can see how I've used it in other places in this painting to drop shadow behind things that are in front. And if you ever did any of those exercises at school where you drew an orb and shaded it so that you had a lighter area in the centre, we had that idea of the light area coming towards us. And we're going to use the same when we paint our stems. So what we want is the centre part of the stem to be lighter, the outside edges to be darker. This will give a sense of it curving. And there are a few techniques we can use to do this. We can also add, if we want to, some extra shadow, either down both sides or on one side. We can use watercolor pencil, but in this occasion, I'm just going to use my paintbrush. First of all, I'll finish painting all of these little buds and let them dry before I show you how we're going to get this nice three-dimensional stem. So let's look at the colour I'm using today. So I've been painting with some permanent rose. I've also been using some nickel titanate, which is a very pale, sort of creamy yellow. However, it doesn't really layer that well and it won't make bright green. It's very good for those very pale colours, and I used it to make some of these colours here and some of these centre colours here. I've been using Cobalt blue because Cobalt is a great colour for getting that sort of mid blue-green that's not too bright but is also not really dull. And here's my scrap paper where I was mixing and swatching. If you want to see how to do some of these techniques, that's up on a YouTube video. It's one of my most popular ones ever, actually. You absolutely loved these techniques, so I'll link that one in the video description. So we're going to mix a mid-range green like this, and then I'm going to lift out the center with a damp brush and add some color, by which I mean some dark blue, along the edges so that we get a curved effect. I'm using this brush, which is a synthetic size 10, and it's big enough that I can sweep along. Although I have been using a smaller brush, as you saw, for some of these fine details, it's really important that we don't have a load of drying lines in our stem. So I'm going to mix some colour up like this. So I've got a nice amount. I'm going to remove any excess pencil that I don't need any longer, and I'm going to go in and start painting up. Now, amazingly, it's a very warm day here in the UK, so this is going to start drying quickly. So I'm actually going to do this almost in two sections, although there's no actual break point between it. So I think what I'll do is I'll grab this other brush I've got here. I'm just rinsing and drying so it's damp, and then I'm going to lift out along the middle here. So putting in the dark along the edges can be done when the paint's a little drier, but lifting out like that, we need to do that while the paint's wet. So that's why I started it there. It can be done, you know, if it dries too quickly, you can re-wet the whole area and then you can lift out. Just going to move my board down. I see I'm about to go off camera. Let's pull this up like so. Painting around those lighter buds that I've made. Again, we'll lift some paint out of the center. Now, because you're actually picking up paint on your brush, sometimes you need to keep rinsing and drying, so you're removing that paint from your brush. Otherwise, you can end up just sort of almost redistributing it. I'm going to bring this along here. Now, it is the case that hollyhock stems certainly do have some texture to them, so I'm not too worried about it being super smooth, like it might be on a tulip, for example. And now before it dries, I'm going to pick up a little blue paint and I'm just going to pop that in. Now I picked that up with quite a dry brush because we don't want it spreading everywhere. And I can take it up like this, going a bit offline there. I have to have my hand at a very strange angle when I am painting for YouTube. So forgive me if I am not as neat as I would otherwise be. Now that's a bit stripy, so what we can do is we can, if we want, because it's dried so quickly, we can re-wet the whole area. And I am re-wetting the whole area, not part of it, because if you re-wet part of an area, you're going to get drying lines. So I'm going to re-wet this whole area here so we can blend a little bit. Now that's not bad, but to give it a little bit more vibrancy, I'm just going to get some yellow and drop that in the center there. And that's just going to give us a bit of brightness. If you ever paint stems and they just look really wishy-washy and like there's not much substance to them, you can always go in with another layer of paint over the top. It's called glazing, and what that does is it just makes everything look a bit more solid. When you're painting flowers like this, you want the leaves and the stems to look chunky and solid, and you want the flowers to look ethereal and transparent. At least that's the plan. Now, if you appreciate what I do here on YouTube, don't forget you can always grab a channel membership. It just helps me to have a little bit of guaranteed income. It's only a couple of dollars a month. I think it's £2.99 British pounds. And as always, before you leave this video, don't forget to have a look in the video description. You'll find all sorts of free tutorials down there, as well as a list of all the colours I'm using today and links to any other places where you can find parts of this tutorial on YouTube. It'll also be available in due course as a very economically priced mini course.